call this meeting to order. I believe that's what I'm supposed to say. So please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Daly.
President Daly.
Vice President McCoy.
Here.
Trustee Clements. Here. Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Valentine. Here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Platt. As you can see, President Daly is not with us here in person. I'm here in her stead. As of yet, we don't need to tell you where she is, but in the future, it's my understanding that we will have to tell you her location. Be it for now, she looks very nice from where I'm looking at this point. Our next board meeting is on November 2nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. right here in the gym. I think that's all I have to say. Dr. Benante, over to you.
Thank you, Sean, and welcome to the members of the community as well as the members of the board who are with us this evening. I did want to start just by welcoming Luke Perella, who will be our student advisor to the Board of Education. As I mentioned during our last meeting, Luke will be joining us for our workshop meetings. And Luke, we really look forward to your participation in our meetings, and we'll hear a little bit more from you in a few minutes. So thanks for being here tonight. Just a few announcements for me before we transition to a couple of special acknowledgments. First, you may have read or you will be reading in the news shortly. Governor Hochul announced this afternoon that New York State has reached an agreement in an important case, which was New Yorkers for Students' Educational Rights versus New York State, which will establish that New York State will fully fund the current foundation aid formula, which is something we usually talk about come February or March or so. This will likely result in about $690,000 in additional funding for Haldane over a 3-year period of time. So that's good news for us, and we'll have more to share about what those dollars will go towards come budget time. So it's a 3-year process or a 3-year phase-in, which there were signs that this would occur during last year's budget process, but good news nonetheless. This secures that the foundation aid will be funded in its entirety by the end of a 3-year period. So. Last week, Alan Barry, who was a consultant who we hired, completed the on-site portion of his audit of our human resources related practices and procedures. The audit is being completed as a means of gaining an objective perspective from Alan's group on our processes, given the transitions that have occurred in the human resource offices. The on-site portion included meetings with all members of our administration, support personnel, and also the leadership of each of our labor associations. And the full audit will be complete by the end of December, and I look forward to sharing the results of that with the board when the time comes. And thanks to Alan for facilitating that last week. And lastly, you may have recognized or identified the umbrellas at your seats. This is School Board's Recognition Week, and I wanted to take a moment on behalf of our school community to express my appreciation for your service to Haldane, its students, our faculty and staff. The past year has continued to demonstrate that public education is a very complicated landscape, and dare I say there's been a bit of a storm, if you will, in public education with COVID and some other factors that have really influenced the public dialogue as it relates to our schools. Yet our board's steady and supportive leadership has helped us to keep our kids in school and our community focused on our long-term goals for students. So you'll see the tag on the umbrellas are "We couldn't have weathered the storm without you." Again, a small sign of our appreciation, and thank you to Catherine and Megan Shields in my office for helping facilitating these small gifts as a token of our appreciation. And I ask our community just join us in a round of applause for our school board. And transitioning just to some more good news, I'll ask that Mrs. Sniffen come to the podium. We have a few students we'd like to recognize this evening as our special guests.
Good evening, everyone. I guess, has become somewhat tradition at this time of year. We get to recognize our students that are commended or National Merit Scholars. This year we have 3 students that are receiving the Commended National Merit Scholarship Awards in recognition. This award is granted to juniors based upon their PSAT scores. And students who score in the top 3% in the nation out of 1.6 million students, so just the top 3%, will receive this award. So this year, again, we have 3. Owen Carmesino is the first. He could not be here tonight, but again, as is tradition, beyond just test scores, I think it's very important we also recognize something else about our students and our learners. So Owen is a member of our varsity soccer team here at Haldane. Owen is also a full-time BOCES student, where he attends the Honors Engineering program at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. So Owen couldn't be here this evening, but if we could give Owen a round of applause. Next, we have Marcel Schwartz, who is here this evening with his father. Marcel, again, a student who is a student beyond just the classroom and the PSAT score. Marcel this year stepped up last minute to really ensure that the Haldane drama production went on and filled the shoes of being a stage manager, pseudo stage manager this past spring. So we're grateful for Marcel and to have him here as a Haldane student. Marcel, come on up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
And finally, Matt Mccoy. I think everybody here knows Matt Mccoy in one way, shape, or form. Matt, in addition to receiving the Commended National Merit Scholar Award, is responsible for sound for probably 95% of things that take place here on Haldane campus. That includes the drama performances, the musicals, any concerts we have, if we have assemblies, the Blues Devils, rehearsals on Thursday nights. Matt is responsible for sound. He can jump in and run the light board. He can basically do anything related to technology here at Haldane. So Matt, congratulations on both this award and all that you do for Haldane. And congratulations to their families as well. We're going to take a picture outside.
Think they're heading out for a photograph now?
Yes.
Great. As a member of the theatrical community, it's so great to hear so much drama representation in these 3 people. So now, next on to our workshop topic, curriculum and human resources update.
Yes, so Mr. Elder will come to the podium and he'll provide an overview on some early year curriculum and human resource matters. We anticipate that Josh will be reporting to the board quite frequently throughout the year. So this is just a preliminary update on where we stand on some matters related to curriculum as well as human resources. Thanks, Josh. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening to my colleagues, Dr. Benante, the Board of Education, and the Haldane learning community. I appreciate the opportunity to give you, as Dr. Benante said, a quick overview of some initiatives and things we've been working on in the Office of Curriculum Instruction, as well as in Human Resources. I believe everyone has a copy of the slides in front of you. Yes, great. So the first thing I would say in terms of curriculum is that, curriculum is derived from a couple of resources. It can come from national standards, and of course, as curriculum and education is serviced by state and local governments, and state standards also provide. So you have national standards and you have state standards. But as the quote shows on the screen says, a high-quality curriculum reflects the values, priorities of the district, schools, teachers, and students that it serves. The real work of any school district, of any local school district, is how it translates these standards from both national and state organizations that reflect upon the values and priorities that school districts have. And this is one of the reasons why, if you go to New York State and travel into any elementaries, middle school, or high school, you will see similar subjects being taught in very, very different ways and presented in very, very different ways. So curriculum is really the planning stages of how we take that information and then we utilize it into more of a localized situation. And again, we translate that into what any local district kind of prioritizes. In Haldane, right, Haldane has gone through a process over the last few years to reach the situation where it is clearly articulated the values and priorities of the district via the Haldane Essentials. So over 3 years ago, resulted out of the strategic coherence plan, the community came to the realization that these would be the 6 essentials that make Haldane unique and that are specific to Haldane and that are valued within the community from parents, students, teachers, and faculty and staff and administrators. So where we sit now is this really unique opportunity to think about how in Haldane we take these 6 articulated values against these state and local standards and start thinking about our own curriculum and where these manifest themselves within a K-12 process. And very much so in situations like writing, where we take a look at, well, what does writing look like in kindergarten, in first grade, and second grade, and third grade? The Haldane Essentials provide a very unique opportunity to take a look at these values, such as critical thinking. And what does that look like in first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade? And how these values spiral themselves throughout the curriculum. With really the emphasis being, as you think of a student progressing through their school career from a kindergartner to 12th grade, that they are consistently in each year engaging with these essentials in increasingly complex situations as they move from one grade level to the next. It's not that they have to start over, it's that the learning in the first year or in the previous year about communication or growth mindset translates itself to how then that is amplified in the next grade level and so on and so forth. With the goal being that as students graduate in 12th grade, they have not only set forth and mastered the curriculum standards set forth by New York State, but they also have this kind of additional seal of approval from a district in which they've actually articulated and demonstrated that they've lived up to the values that the district orients. It's also extremely helpful in terms of teachers as they sit and start thinking about designing experiences for students or designing assessments for students. These 6 essentials kind of provide the backbone for how they start thinking about students interacting with curriculum. And it's a very unique process. And so where we sit today is Haldane's in a situation to really capitalize on this work and start thinking about how these essentials manifest themselves in the work. And I can't say that word, my apologies. The strategic coherence plan provides that roadmap, so to speak. Last year, a significant amount of work was done to advance the district's mission in achieving what was laid out in the strategic coherence plan, well before myself. There was a cohort of educators that met during the year that really examined the attributes of a quality curriculum, what those actually are and what those look like. And beyond that, once they reached consensus, was also thinking about, well, how do we document that? How do we make that shown and known within our curriculums? And these documents were revised and worked on and revised multiple times. And so what came out of that was a document we are looking to utilize this year, K-12 universally, as a way of creating common language and common framework for our staff to be thinking about how they not only document the standards they've been working on, but also how these bigger concepts such as the Haldane Essentials live within their curriculums to start this horizontal and vertical articulation. Additionally, the Haldane Curriculum Council, with its purpose and its norms, provides a really great structure for us to continue this work moving forward. And so as we spoke about at the first Haldane Curriculum Council, one of the major initiatives that we have this year in the area of curriculum instruction is really going back to that roadmap provided, working off what was provided to us last year, and really a very nice natural evolution of this work is taking it out of the exploration range and really putting it into the implementation range K-12. And so as it says there, what we're looking to do this year is to really create a system that ensures the ongoing development and implementation of vertically and horizontally aligned curriculum that supports the attainment of the Haldane Essentials. And the great thing about this work is already happening. This isn't to say that we're starting over. Not only were the accomplishments of what was done by this cohort in the Haldane Curriculum Council last year, but teachers have been doing this for a while. The real work is trying to just refine some of that work, creating this common language, and be thinking about how this document provides a nice framework for us to start having conversations, deeper conversations, about how the Haldane Essentials are manifested within our curriculums K-12. It's really exciting and really very much so looking forward to working through that. I'm going to transition briefly here to human resources. There's many facets to human resources, obviously, and the slide that the graphic you have there is just a simple way of trying to think about the different ways that human resources interacts within the school district. As I've transitioned into this role, I've learned that the early on onsets with human resources have really dealt in a lot of compliance issues to start off with. The beginning of the school year is you're just ripe with opportunities. As the school year starts up, there's lots of things that have to happen in terms of a compliance standard. So some of these have been, COVID continues to provide, as that landscape changes and shifts, continues to provide ways that the school districts need to ensure that they're COVID compliant in many ways. And this year, it's resulted in the staff testing as well as student testing, and also in terms of looking at leave eligibility for individuals related to COVID-related absences or COVID-related illnesses. There's an annual compliance training of district staff. Each year by the state of New York, there are a series of tutorials or compliance trainings that all faculty and staff have to go through. They tend to be also job specific, so faculty and staff kind of have a certain set, and then areas in maintenance have another ones, and bus drivers have another one. So working with my colleagues to ensure that this information is up to date and that everybody has been appropriately trained and has gone through those trainings, so that they have the appropriate information that they needed moving forward. There's areas like the student level digital equity data collection that will be forthcoming that we are working on. And again, these are additional mandates from the state about how we collect data from the community. And those have changed slightly, and so we're working on that one. The TEACH system, which is the system in the New York State Education portal, which really deals with the certification of staff. That could be a whole presentation. Long story short is there was a registration process in about 2016 and has since then required the registration process for individuals. The first year of that 5-year compliance is coming up, and so it's really working with faculty and staff to make sure that they're going through the appropriate procedures to make sure that they're up to date on their certification issues and that they're up to date in the TEACH system. We've been assisting in the hiring process for certain vacancies that are there, obviously collaborating with building principals. There's been labor relations with bargaining units, and lastly is organizing and working with the professional development catalog, both on a regional area and as well as a local district area. The good news is in professional development is the Human Resources Department works closely with the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and I tend to be the person for both of those, so those conversations are definitely happening seamlessly. But as Dr. Benante had referenced early in his updates, I think that one of the things that's really been a foundation early on in terms of human resources is thinking of this essential of a growth mindset is our human resources audit. The idea was, we conducted a voluntary audit of the Human Resources Department on October 12th, 13th, and 14th. So as Dr. Benante said, a consulting firm had come down and contracted for 3 days. And as somebody coming new into the role, it was a very extensive process. There was a 2-step on-site process. There were interviews and individuals with about 23 titles in the district that were impacted by human resources. And then they had requested what's called a document review phase of approximately 32 topics associated with the Human Resources Department. So a very thorough interview process with individuals on campus, as well as a very thorough process for our policies that are on file to evaluate those. And as, again, Dr. Benante said, the next phase talks about an objective report of findings with recommendations. And I put in there non-judgmental because it's not about good or bad or where we are. It's about where we are in our present state and using that information to grow as we start thinking about solidifying. And it's really going to provide the district with great guidance on how to best move the HR department forward based upon those findings. And as somebody who's coming in and transitioning into that role, it was a great opportunity, and I'm thankful that we actually had the opportunity to do it so early on. And I think it will act very much like the strategic coherence plan in the area of human resources. It'll provide a nice roadmap or foundation for things for us to focus on in the future. Right? I will pause there and at this point take any questions that might be out there.
I'll start. Thank you for the comprehensive overview. I was particularly enthusiastic to hear you reference all the great work that was done last year and how you're building upon it. And I know that seemed to me before this meeting to seem your chief obligation, but it's also great to hear a little bit more about the other hat you're wearing and sort of how elegantly you bring those two positions together and speak to how they support one another. So thank you for that.
Yes. Welcome.
Yeah, I have a quick question on the curriculum piece, which I'm super excited about. I'm going to opine here, and you can tell me when I'm wrong. I would assume that for state curriculum guidelines and mandates and federal, there are fairly specific, these are the things you need to learn, these are the things you need, this is what competency and exceptional performance looks like in terms of knowledge base and skill set, which totally makes sense because they have guidelines and instructions. I'm interested in the level of resources and support available for defining the Haldane essentials. Because if I say problem solving, that may have a very different, my understanding of problem solving may be different from Peggy's, may be different from Sean's, A. And B, what are sort of the resources that you're going to look for to say, okay, if we're going to define problem solving and infuse that into the mandated curriculum, what are we measuring, how are we doing, all that sorts of stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely agree. And so some of that early work that I probably forgot to mention, with about defining really what are the attributes of critical thinking, what are the attributes of communication, because I would tend to agree, right? Those are words, but if we don't have a common understanding of what we mean when we say those words, we're going to be left up to having different interpretations. And we're going to kind of be right back where we started, which different things happening in different classrooms. I do know that last year the building principals had facilitated a series during their faculty meetings of different ways of exploring each one of those topics, each one of those essentials within their faculties to be starting to think about generating a common definition for what that looked like. I also reference back to the first couple of superintendent's conference stages we had at the beginning of the year. We're also spent looking at what do those look like in grade level bands. And so I guess my answer to it is it's ongoing work, right? It's happening kind of simultaneously and continuously as teachers are also looking to document their curriculum. And I would say that is a continued charge that we still have, is refining what we believe to be those definitions of critical thinking or the Haldane essentials, to making sure that we do have common attributes, so to speak, so when we say it in the high school, it means the same thing that we're saying in the middle school as well as the elementary school. In terms of resources that you say, there is no shortage of different definitions through what these would look like. I think what the building principals and their faculties have already looked at is they've already started to examine some of those definitions and start picking out some of the words and phrases and things that we like. And it's not about, well, I like this one more than that one. It's like, I like parts of this one and parts of that one and parts of this one. And so as we work this year to kind of not only articulate our curriculums in those ways, I think simultaneously the work we're also doing is continuing to come to consensus about what those essentials mean in terms of common vocabulary for that.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else? I think so. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. I might
If
need
not,
a little.
I'll be the
Thank you.
human microphone.
I just wanted to add that I really appreciate in hearing the presentation that I feel like Josh has implemented some of the essentials in his approach to implementing the essentials. Like I'm hearing words, I really appreciate that you're approaching this work with a growth mindset, and that your communication is clear and positive. And I feel like that kind of top-down approach of how our administration is implementing the essentials will trickle into how it happens into the classroom, and hopefully, therefore, it then trickles into how our students are therefore embracing and embodying the work. So that's just what I wanted to say, that I feel like you're implementing the essentials in your work with the essentials. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. And I would also say that, the work of my colleagues and the faculty and staff of Haldane prior to my arrival has, really just set the table for this, and as I stand here as, the director of curriculum, I'm really just communicating the work that has happened in an extremely difficult year last year. And it's really a testament to, like I said, my colleagues and the faculty and staff to not put that work aside and continue that work. So as we kind of come out of this end and start a new year, which looks a little bit different than last year, that the Haldane Central School District is really in a really good position to move this work forward based upon what had taken place last year.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Unless you have anything to say, Dr. Benante? No? Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you
Elder.
all very much.
And now we'll move on to communication from the public. You'll note that last week, we had a small conversation about changing the text slightly. Listen for the additional sentence, but we just wanted to delineate that our first communication from the public would be in reference to or directly response to the special presentation and the agenda items. And our second presentation or communication with the public can be more broad issues to bring to the board. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in, state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel are prohibited. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening, so please leave your contact information with our District Clerk, Catherine Platt, for prompt follow-up from the board president, Jen Daly, not Sean McNall, or Superintendent. Do we have any comments? Oh, come on up, sir.
Hi, my name's Peter Henderson. I served on the board from 2012 to 2015. I had the pleasure of serving with Peggy and Jen, and it's School Board Appreciation Week. And so I'm here just to say how much I appreciate your dedication and the thoughtful way that you approach and conduct business here. I've thought about the school board a lot these past 2 years. During COVID, and I'm so grateful to you and also to the administrative team, Anne and Julia, and all the faculty and the staff and all the parents and students for working together to get through this. No one could have picked a harder time to be on the school board, and I can't imagine how hard it's been for you, but I just want to say thank you very much for all of your work. And I haven't been in the school in a while, but it looks great. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for your service. And I, for one, didn't know that these past 2 years were going to be like this, and so I don't know that I chose it, but I'm happy to be here. So now on to information reports. Our first report is from our student advisor, Luke Perella. That's your first time joining us, Luke, so no pressure, but if you have a report to provide, that'd be great. Great.
Yep, so I got a few things just wanted to highlight. So first thing, recently I think we've seen a lot of participation in school events, so it's been a good time for school spirit. So earlier this month we had Spirit Week. We saw a lot of participation among all the grade levels. I think that was good. And additionally, the homecoming dance, we saw over 86% of high school students in attendance. So it's been a lot more than typical numbers. So that's been good too. And then that brings me into within the extracurriculars and clubs. We've had a lot of new club members over the past since school started. So we've seen many clubs actually double in size from last year, and it's been new clubs have been forming, and I think it looks promising as clubs begin to have their first meetings and sort of move forward into doing some actual stuff. And then finally, I was talking with the student council. They've mainly been working on their trunk or treat. It's Halloween activity sort of for elementary students. It's going to be happening on the 29th, and so they're just currently collecting candy donations and working on organizing that. So that's all.
All right, thank you so much. Any questions for Luke?
I do have a question before you move on to something else. Tell us something about yourself, given that this is your first meeting.
Well, I run cross country and track, so I think that's been a big part of my high school activity. So that's one thing.
Fantastic. Okay.
Where's the trunk or treat?
I believe it's happening in the parking lot, I think out there. I'm not sure on the details, but I know there's a lot of flyers been handed out. So
Thank you.
Who won the tug of war?
that's a bit of a sore subject.
Care to talk about it, or?
It's not the seniors, but we know we did have a first place finish in the puzzle. I was on the team.
Humility above all things. That's important. So.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perella. Ms. Jamin?
Good evening. I wanted to highlight a few things that have been going on at the elementary school. In my report, I mentioned that we have started off using the new MTSS plan, and we got to have our first few student support team meetings and our first data team meeting, which have been exciting. It may seem like a small change in name from child study team to student support team, but just inviting additional members and being committed to getting a bigger team for brainstorming around how we support children in different ways has been an exciting transition. Our clinicians met to be trained on safety care and how we support students with de-escalation and supports as they might enter a crisis situation, which happened last week. And that was that's something that we started just before COVID closed us down, and then with all of the restrictions on distancing and contact and such, because it does involve a physical component in the training, was put on pause. So it was exciting to get back on track in how we can support children and make sure that our staff are trained for the event of a crisis throughout the district. We've had a lot of exciting community events. We had Fire Safety Day, and our local fire department, along with Dan Valentine, came and spoke to our students. And it just speaks to how the Haldane Essentials are just embedded in so many things, as he talked to the students about problem solving and critical thinking if they were to face an emergency, and then also going home and advocating to their parents about having safety drills at home. And the questions the students asked and discussed showed just how the teachers are talking and using that kind of vocabulary with them in the classroom, and they were bringing it to their questions. We saw that again yesterday and today as we had our author visits for Literacy Week. Our first author was Clarabel Ortega. She was in person yesterday, which was also an exciting change to have a visitor in person. We were able to do that outdoors with our 3rd through 5th grade students. And she was able to share how obstacles and difficulties had challenged her throughout her life, and that at times she might have wanted to give up or choose a different path, but that with perseverance, she was able to make it through those things, and really demonstrated a growth mindset in how she approached becoming an author, and was able to speak about that with the students. They might have been a little more excited when she shared that she also wrote for Marvel, but they definitely were asking questions about her journey and how she made it through those different obstacles as well. Yesterday, to this morning, our author originally was a different author, but there was an emergency for her, so we had Ruth Chan, who is the author and illustrator of a new book, Alpactory, which is about an alpaca who has a factory that packs you for new adventures. And she spoke to the students about her process with writing and illustrating these books. And the students began asking her questions about, was she ever frustrated when she was writing? Was she ever frustrated when she was going through this really complicated process of illustrating her books? Did she ever go outside the lines, and how did she get so good at it? And she was explaining to them that, yes, she makes mistakes and she hits these challenges, but adults do that, kids do that, and working through them, you learn a lot from your mistakes. And then one of Miss Spinelli's students got on camera, because this one was on Zoom, and asked, so do you see yourself as having a growth mindset? Which, that was the last question. After that, we just needed to end there. So she didn't know what a growth mindset was with that phrasing. So the young lady in Miss Spinelli's class proceeded to define a growth mindset for her, explain to her that it would mean that she could get better at things and didn't give up, and would have a positive attitude about it. And she said, well, yes, now I will know what to say I have, but that's exactly what I think you should have as a growth mindset. So our author visits were really rewarding, not just in the fact that we were meeting these wonderful people who were sharing their stories, but the questions that our students were asking showed that even at this point in the year, they're hearing these messages from their teachers, and they are really internalizing them and using that in their work and their thinking.
Great.
Thank you.
Questions?
No,
All right.
good. Middle school, Dr. Silke?
Good evening, everyone. I can echo Christine and say that the middle school was treated to have JJ and Chris Grabenstein visit us today, and they also talked about growth mindset in the editing process, and they spoke about how in even just the first page of their latest book, Shine, they went through many, many, many edits, and they took the time to encourage the kids about that. And our students really took to that, and they asked questions about if there was ever a time that they wanted to give up, or when working together, was there ever a time that they disagreed? So they really, our students were really thinking and being mindful about the process of creating published writing. So I hope that some budding authors stem from these great literacy weeks that the PTA is treating our students to. So thank you to the PTA. At the end of this week, very exciting, and also along the line of the Haldane Essentials, the 6th grade team is taking their students to the Taconic Outdoor Education Center. The grade is going in 2 shifts, half on Thursday and half on Friday. And the idea for the project came out of the fact that when the 6th grade teachers were doing their professional learning plans, they chose as a team to focus on wellness. And in talking with each of the teachers individually and what might, get the year started with the focus on wellness, this project came out of that. And Ms. McCullum, a special thank you to her because she reached out to Mr. Stoll at the Taconic Outdoor Education Center, and he put her in touch with a grant program called Connect Kids to Parks. And the whole process, I think, has been already enriching for the 6th grade team, and the students are going to have a wonderful time this Thursday and Friday, so we're really excited about that. And then lastly, hot off the presses at our last workshop meeting was the fact that the middle school is going to move forward with the community read for this year. And in the time that's passed, Danielle Pesey, our 7th grade ELA teacher, and Terry Eckes, our librarian, procured a selection of books. And the theme was chosen, which is one of the enduring themes for social studies of migration and the movement of people. And the 3 Jeff Silverstein, our VP for the middle school from the PTA, collected up the parents that are going to be willing to read the 3 books with the faculty, and the books came in today. So it's very exciting. The 3 selections are Refugee by Alan Gratz, A Night Divided by Jennifer Nielsen, and Heat by Mike Lupica. Not Lupica, Lupica. So we're looking forward to reading the books and hoping to have that selection out to the community by the end of November so that lots of wintertime reading can happen for a community read, ideally the week of March 21st outdoors. So we'll be excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Seal. Ms. Sniffen?
Try to keep mine short. You already heard from me once today. But In addition to congratulating these students for the National Merit Scholar, we were notified early last week that we have 3 students that will be competing at the area All-State, which does take place in our own county. If you remember last year, we had 1 student that went up to the full state music festival, but this is the area All-State. So Sophie Sabin, Conrad White, and Elaine Llewellyn will all be competing. So they've been working very hard with Mr. Rich and with Jess Stein on their individual pieces for that upcoming festival. In addition to that, I know Christine had mentioned their MTSS data team is up and running. The high school had their first meeting last week at the 5-week notice period. So same thing, reviewing many data points on our students and discussing ways to better support students that may have different individual needs, and at the same time looking at students that maybe we need to figure out how to challenge them, that their growth is exceeding where we would think they would be, and they need that extra push. So that was a great meeting last week. In addition to that, I do need to thank the guidance department and our department chairs. So the week after homecoming, we had a very busy week again in the high school with PSATs, SATs, and the 9-10 parent night. I thought maybe I would just read a quick email as it relates to 9-10 parent night and feedback that we received. We received quite a bit of positive feedback from parents. I think some of you maybe saw it on social media, and then there were a lot of emails that were flying. So one email, I found the 9-10 parent night to be incredibly informative. I never realized how important it is to forecast the courses my kids will take and need to in order to illuminate a pathway to maximize their success. I was particularly impressed with the BOCES courses and experiences offered, while the presentation on SAT and ACT was most enlightening. Thank you to all who were involved. The night was highly organized and ran very smoothly. Thank you. So I want to thank the department chairs for their work and Mr. Manny for being a part of that. Thank you.
I actually have a really strong memory of I really do, you know, like I really do. There was that, and then there was something else that happened. I remember early on there was a financial,
the financial aid night, which is now actually only virtual. They're not doing that in person still, so we did send out that email to all high school parents. I mean, obviously it's most important that your senior parents are watching that as they're filling out FAFSA in different financial aid forms. But we did send that out a few weeks ago to parents, but it's a recording now.
No, it's just the the night for 9th and 10th grade parents. It's just such a great idea. It's so good that keeps going. So thank you.
Yeah, we will be doing this December. We will be doing new this year a junior parent night. We haven't done that. It'll be the presentation that we do in the classrooms to the junior students that I don't think the information always makes its way home. So more information to come on junior parent night.
Thank you, Ms. Sniffen. Ms. Browns?
Good evening. This month I wanted to share with the board a couple of updates. As you know, over the past 2 years, we've been working on our dialectical behavior therapy initiative, using dialectical behavior therapy informed practices with our counselors, and then also expanding those practices into the classroom. So just one example that I got to witness this month was with our middle school counselor. She's our new middle school counselor, Liana Festo. She teaches a 6th grade guidance class. And I was able to see her teaching mindfulness to our 6th graders. She had organized several lessons on mindfulness. One where they went into the garden and they talked, they sat and they took in what they were hearing, what they were seeing, what they were smelling, what they were feeling in the garden. And then I got to see the next class where they talked about that experience and what it meant to them and how it helped them and what mindfulness means. And then she organized stations within the classroom with different mindfulness activities, such as word searches, writing activities, more physical, kinesthetic activities that the students could do. And it was an entire lesson that every student was engaged in and every student was participating in. And personally, as a parent of a 6th grader, I know the changes that these kids are experiencing coming from elementary school into middle school and the challenges that they're facing. So it was really a positive experience to see the students being able to take this pause in their day and really think about their social emotional well-being, and really her incorporating that wellness into her classroom for their day, for entire lessons. So I wanted to share that because we continue to expand different aspects of DBT into the classroom. This year, one of our department goals is to explore new and existing strategies for teaching students who struggle with reading, teaching them decoding skills, teaching them encoding skills, particularly our students who are in need of Tier 3 supports, students who are well below grade level in reading and need very specific, explicit instruction in those areas. And not being a literacy specialist, I'm very interested in this, and I rely a lot on our professionals here that are trained in literacy. So I was glad to find out that Andrea Saunders, our literacy specialist, Jen Gernant, who's one of our special ed teachers, showed a really intense interest in being involved in this work and leading this work. So what we're doing is looking at what we currently do in the district and how we teach reading to these learners in district and sharing those strategies. Jen and Andrea are very active members of our student support team, so they come with tools and they come with strategies, and when teachers bring a student who's struggling in specific areas, they pinpoint those areas and then share strategies at those meetings, and then we touch base after several weeks of implementing those strategies. So we're going to look at what we do and making sure that we share that information amongst all grade levels and all special educators and AIS instructors. And then look on the outside. What other programs are there? What other materials should we be looking at? Later this month, we're going to a dyslexia workshop, and we'll be able to get some knowledge from our colleagues. So I'm looking forward to this work, and I'm really excited about our professionals that want to be involved in this work. They're providing ongoing staff development after school to provide additional instruction, and I know they will continue to do so. We'll keep you updated.
So I'm going to talk about something that my own organization does, but it's for free, so I'm not. So there's a really amazing website that grew out of work that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education for a long time. It's called the National Center for Intensive Intervention. It's actually like a place where you can go and like search for grade levels, topic areas, and find different resources, both assessments and interventions, as well as information like about the evidence base that exists for them. It's actually a phenomenal resource. I don't have anything to do with it, but I mean, people who use it, I think, find it really very helpful. So anyway, if you have any
appreciate you
questions
sharing
about
the
it,
resource, because
shoot
we're
me.
gathering resources and looking.
It's a good database. So anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah. Tara, what is a guidance class?
Oh, so in 6th grade, all of our 6th graders take a guidance class with the guidance counselor, and they talk about career development, they talk about social emotional well-being, they, work on social skills, things like that, things that they need for middle school to help them prepare for middle school. And Liana Festo is incorporating a lot of our DBT work she's infusing that into her guidance class. I think it's an every other day, is that right? Or is it every day? It's quarterly. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
One last question. Can you talk a little bit about, and this may be a question for you as well, can you talk a little bit about the intersection between the work that you're doing on finding new resources for intervention in students that need significant ELA language help and the work on curriculum? I mean, it feels like one of these matrixy type efforts. And so how do the two of you work together to make that happen in the best way?
So Josh and I have had some conversations about this early on when he started, and he talked to me about, what's important in terms of curriculum.
Yep.
For me, where do I see need, and my thoughts about curriculum within our department. So I'm hoping that Josh will be a resource to me as
Yeah.
we search, and will share his, his expertise in terms of context and resources that he's using in the region to explore some of this. So we've had some conversations about it, but haven't done the direct work on curriculum yet.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rounds.
Yeah.
No, I said thank you.
Thank you.
The most important two words, of course. Mr. Elder.
I think drawing a little bit off of what Ms. Rounds just said, my update was just to say that, I think that teaching is a very complex art form and endeavor, and people who want to stay on top of that are always looking for opportunities to grow on themselves, and not only in their content knowledge, but their pedagogical skills and their different techniques and skills within the classroom. And I would say since the start of the school year, the teachers at the Haldane Central School District have enrolled in numerous different types of professional development, some that are just one-day kind of workshops and others that span multiple days throughout the school year. And these come from a range of different professional organizations, colleges and universities, and local BOCES workshops. And I think what happens when anytime an educator takes those professional development is obviously there's the attainment of skill and knowledge, which is part of it. But the other part is the interaction with people in other districts. And it's an opportunity to network and to create relationships and to start seeing, it goes back to my earlier presentation about how things are different in different schools around the same kind of curriculum. And even to what Ms. Rounds is saying is, as she talks about the AIS providers, who are people who are going to these, is they start interacting with other educators and networking. And this is where you really start at that collection of knowledge and start thinking of best practices. Many times, unfortunately, teaching can be a very kind of isolating activity, right? It's the day-to-day. And kind of getting and branching out and taking professional development not only leads to the attainment of new skills or new ways of thinking, but also leads to dialogue and meeting individuals that operate on a similar platform or plane, and you never know where those opportunities go from there. But I think one thing that I was struck by as I transitioned into Haldane is the number of professional developments that are actually created and offered by Haldane teachers, and then that are offered to teachers, and then teachers sign up for them. And I felt like this is just a really good diagnosis of a very healthy professional development cycle, right? You got educators who go out based upon some sort of need and attain some sort of knowledge or skill that they come back into their classroom, they're trying it out, they're perfecting it, and then they get to the point where they feel like they can turnkey this information back to other people within their building, which not only is cost effective, and I don't mean that as a negative, but anytime you can build the expertise of your own faculty and staff and create a system where they're now becoming the training and building that expertise within a classroom, you really get that job embedded professional development, and really teachers start acting more out of silos and acting as resources for one another. And so I've just seen since the beginning of the school year just a really great flurry of really well-intentioned professional development opportunities from staff, from the guidance from building principals to make sure that these are targeted and intentional based upon the focus for the school year.
Okay. Before you go, can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk about how either now or in the future you think about providing recommendations either at the district or cohort level for professional development cycle or strategy based on what we're trying to do, or at the individual level? I just don't have any insight into how an individual teacher or collection of teachers might choose or be guided to take particular course offerings.
Sure. So I think, when we talk about that, we're trying to make sure that things are strategic and coherent as much as possible. And, I go back to that planning document of the Strategic Coherence Plan and the Haldane Essentials. Things that we should be doing should be related to the attainment of, what that document has provided, as well as those 6 essentials, right? And so, small changes that have happened prior to me coming here is, in the process of selecting professional development, that teachers would go through, there is a place where they need to identify how this professional development leads or relates to one of those Haldane Essentials. And I think when you're thinking of a professional development cycle, right, I think I do think it, I don't have a chalkboard, whiteboard. It is a cycle. And so the best professional development plans are based upon what you're observing and seeing within a school year or a school district. And I think that data can come from a bunch of places, right? It can come from classroom observations. It can come through team meetings. It comes through dialogue with teachers. It comes through, as you start talking about assessments and looking at performance and common assessments and start looking at trends from students and performance. It starts teachers to have conversations about, okay, based upon this might be an area of need that we're looking for or would want to do. And so I think you're having that conversation kind of at different levels, right? You can have that as a district level. You can look at that in building levels. You can look at that as, discipline-specific levels. You can look at that grade level levels. There's multiple ways of trying to engage in that work that trying to tells what the need is, and then it's trying to identify, once you have that, is to start thinking about, okay, where do we go, what we think are good resources in order to kind of learn from that. And so some ways are to go out to professional development. Sometimes it's simply release time to get people together to start, having in-depth conversations, that allows that cognition to take place about some of the planning and strategy that goes there. So to kind of answer, I don't think it's a one shot, but when you're talking about I think what a healthy professional development cycle is, it's born out of what we're noticing in trends within our own students. And so it's really taking a look at, well, how are we monitoring and assessing students, from individuals to also groups as well. And I think that does have a lot of work to do with the curriculum that we have, right? The curriculum is the plan of how we're doing it, and then there's the actual implementation of it, and then there's how the students are actually learning it and demonstrating that. And engaging in the kind of those conversations consistently will start making sure that we're at least the professional development that we're targeting is targeted for an intentional purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elder.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Cowan?
Good evening, Dr. Benante and members of the board. We had an unforgettable homecoming weekend that started with our pep rally on the turf field on Friday, October 8th. We couldn't have asked for a more perfect day of weather. The afternoon was filled with fun, laughter, school spirit, and all of our students did a great job participating in various activities on the field, which included the tug of war and the puzzle competition. I want to share a well-deserved thank you to Kristen Paparo, Marilyn Grenice, Joe Vergidamo, and Ed Crow, who collaborated to facilitate this special event for our student body. Following the pep rally was a full ticket of home contests played by our varsity teams between Friday and Saturday. I'm so proud of the effort all of our teams gave over homecoming weekend and continue to be proud of the effort our athletes offer each day. During halftime of the football game, we honored the inductees for the 2021 Hall of Fame class and formally accepted these folks into our Hall of Fame the next day at the Thayer Hotel at West Point. The Hall of Fame Luncheon was a fantastic event with so many people who have played a role in defining why Haldane is a special place. Inductees shared stories from the past and thanked teachers, coaches, students, and staff for playing a role in their success. However, the most memorable part of homecoming weekend was learning how supportive this community is to our athletic program. This great community assisted with renting, donating, setting up and breaking down portable lights, ran concessions, decorated the turf field, cheered our teams on, honored our senior athletes, and ensured the Hall of Fame Luncheon was a flawless event. A special thank you goes out to our Hall of Fame committee, Blue Devil Booster Club, our Football Association, and Girls Soccer Association. However, I know there are many, many more people who deserve our appreciation. So many folks played an important role and will receive a special thank you from the athletic office. I want to say thank you to everyone who volunteered their time and support to make our homecoming weekend a truly great experience for our students and families. We could not have done it without your help. Thank you to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Mr. Walsh?
Good evening. There's a lot of reference this evening to all the events that have taken place over the past month. Facilities Department supports all these events. We talked about 9/10 Parent Night, Homecoming, Board of Education meetings, and facilities and transportation support. Those through obviously transportation services, custodial services, and event setup and breakdown. For perspective, since the last workshop meeting, which was a month ago, September 21st, we supported 51 away athletic events through transportation services and over 49 events that took place on campus. And that's in addition to all our normal regular duties that we perform throughout the day. In terms of capital construction, we continue to move forward. For the windows in the elementary school, the shade systems were delivered and installed. When we did the walkthrough last month, there were still temporary shades. So that's terrific that we're continuing to move forward. For the electrical mechanical phase, that's phase 2 of the capital project. Those bids opened up October 12th. We received 3 bids for that project. All 3 are competitive bids. They're currently being reviewed by the architect and engineer of record. We'll be meeting with them this week and hopefully have a little bit more information in the future and hopefully an award for that aspect. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So now we're going into consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
Second?
These are our minutes from the October 5th business meeting. The one thing we might want to address now is we had discussed thinking about some time in the calendar for this second retreat to discuss many of the topics that came up in our diversity, equity, inclusion joint retreat with Garrison. And I think that Dr. Benante, you and Jen had discussed maybe January or February as being the best time. Great. I don't know about this, how we should begin. If someone wants to volley forth some availability, Dr. Benante, yours is probably the key one.
I'll be there.
Great, okay, perfect.
I just would stay away from February 15th.
February 15th.
Not that, it's a Tuesday. I think we're already meeting that evening anyway.
Yeah.
It's my son's birthday.
Well, does it make more sense for us to meet on a Tuesday when we're already going to be meeting and about what should be the duration of this? A couple of hours, 2 hours?
Yeah, typically, I think we've benefited from having at least 2 hours together in retreat. Okay. It's always better to schedule a little bit more time, so I'd advise we be prepared to schedule 3 hours. Great. And if we end early, that's great.
Great. All right, so let's say, what is our...
4:30 to 7 time before one of our meetings possible, or is that too early?
That's not for me.
That's
I
fine
really
for
come
me.
down to the board if we want to try to do it before a meeting.
Yeah.
Like January 18th, or maybe that first one in February 1st.
Yeah, maybe February 1st.
Maybe that's better.
Yeah. Great, yeah. Candlemas, the Candlemas retreat.
I'll be out of town February 1st.
The meeting.
Oh, Peggy's out of town. So,
Is the 18th an option, Peggy?
Right
Although
now
I'm not showing a meeting on the 18th for some reason. Oh, it's there. Sorry.
There. Great, 18th at 4:30. Is that good for you too, Maggie? Perhaps, yeah. It's hard to know some math.
that sounds good for me.
Great. All
Wow.
right,
Did we say 4:30? Is that what people
We
said?
did.
Yeah. Great.
As long as somebody's serving us dinner, I'll be
Dinner
there.
will be provided. Done.
Now, everyone has definitely put it in their calendars. Dinner will be provided.
Dinner served.
Great. All right, I think I left it at all those in favor.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No? Great. All right, on to committee minutes, Buildings and Ground Committee and the Wellness Committee. Yes.
Your mic.
Oh. Well, thank you. On to committee minutes, the Business and Grounds Committee and the Wellness Committee minutes. I did want to say that we didn't note that in our Wellness Committee, we did note an intention to make some slight adjustments to the charge throughout the year to propose to the board, just to update the language with regard to the Haldane Essentials as we move forward. If there's no other notes, then go on to consent agenda financial. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Just a comment,
Great.
Sean. I just wanted I did not include this in a Friday report, so I just wanted to speak to it. Item 7, which is the approval of an SMOA between the district and the Haldane Faculty Association. I just wanted to speak to it for a moment. Several years ago, the district and the unit agreed to include, and to transition from what was historically contracted services for occupational therapy to hiring our own staff member. Couple of years after that, we made a similar transition for a board-certified behavior analyst. We had typically, historically contracted out for that service. We decided to hire our own individual for that position. Both good moves. Both of those positions are now recognized as part of the teacher's unit in the recognition clause. However, those are not tenure-eligible positions in New York State. So this SMOA memorializes the additional compensation that our BCBA and our OT will receive when they reach a commensurate level of experience in service to the district as our teachers. So just in a nutshell, that's what this is about.
Great. And also want to note the request for leave of absence by Ms. Catherine Skroka. We hope that she gets well very soon, and we look forward to her return. New business.
I'm sorry, I comment.
Oh, sure.
At the vote.
Oh, we didn't vote.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. See, line. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? No? Great. On to new business. Ms. Platt?
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No? All right, this is our second communication from the public. All I'll note here is that this is the comment session for comments on all school district matters. Is anybody who would like to come up to the podium? Any more adulation from you, Peter? No? Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. And moving on to the board committee reports. I don't know if there are anything from policy? No?
Nope, we have a
No?
meeting scheduled, but no new news.
Great. And Western Putnam County School Board Association update. Dr. Benante, Maggie, and I attended the cultural framework conversation. We thought we might talk a little bit about that now. I don't know if you, yeah.
Who'd like to start?
Huh? How about you, Phil? You had your
I'll
mask
start.
off.
Well, it was, I did take my mask off. I really appreciated the overview, and I was particularly interested in hearing about the strategies that Peekskill was employing. Peekskill had provided a more comprehensive overview as a district that's engaged in work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of particular note, there was a lot there. They're a very diverse community, as I'm sure we're all familiar. I think a 70% Latino population. And Dr. Mauricio, David, their superintendent, spoke to the importance of them to, through their hiring process, of trying to be more strategic in hiring a staff, recruiting and hiring a staff that is more reflective of their student population and some of the success that they've had with that. And that resonated with me. I think that's something we've talked to from time to time here. But when I saw the list of colleges and universities that they specifically reach out to, teacher education programs that they specifically reach out to, and there may have been a few other on that slide, I have to get that slide, I think it's really reflective of a district that's bringing a high level of intention in recruitment, and definitely took away some good things from that.
Yeah, and I would say also that the document that was provided for us, which was through the state, as well as some of the PowerPoint, I think there were 2 different PowerPoints that were shared, would be good, I think, for us to incorporate as we're thinking about the retreat moving forward, some combination of what we already had for discussion, and maybe we could use that as an opportunity to discuss it with those who weren't there. Maggie?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to note that, I mean, they've been working on this for, what did they say, 10 years or so, which is, makes us seem sort of behind the wheel with that. But I thought that was interesting. And the other thing that resonated with me, which I thought was interesting, was that one of the really specific use cases was making sure that teachers and libraries had book sources for every culture represented at the school. And to a degree, obviously they have a much more diverse student body than we do, but sort of low-hanging fruit in terms of when we're thinking about EDI. That's sort of easy might not be the right word, but, I know that a lot of the folks that work in the library and a lot of the teachers at Haldane are already working on that to make sure that there's a more diverse selection of books in the classroom and library. I just feel like that's an interesting place to sort of start. So.
Really K through 12, but I think we hear more about K through 5 just because it's part of the program we do in the elementary school, but that's great. Okay, moving on to the board reflections. Anyone have any board reflections? No? No? No. Great. How about you, Jen? You have anything you want to say?
I'd just like to reflect on the fact that Sean McDonald has done a fantastic job tonight.
I knew it.
And I am very appreciative of your board service, Sean, and your stepping up to step in to the spokesperson role this evening.
Thank you so much. I had a sense that if I asked you, you might say something like that, so it's nice to have that confirmed. Thank you. Dr. Benante.
You're doing a great job. I'm going to get out of the way and not add anything more.
All right, then I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.